Welcome to the SEO.co Search Engine Optimization Podcast. Digital marketing essentials and next level tactics. From offsite and on-site optimization to persuasive selling and everything in between. You'll learn actionable tips on what it takes to outright and outrank your competition. Now, here's your host, Nate Need.
Welcome to another episode of the SEO podcast. Today we're going to be discussing just briefly a little bit about podcast syndication for SEO purposes and link building purposes. Just like any good syndicated blog or website or news feed, one of the big benefits of syndication is really exposure. Now you might say, oh, it's duplicate content, but Google knows. So but when it comes to your podcast, there are a number of places that you can get really good exposure as a result of syndicating your feed. And by syndicating your feed, you also it increase, has a number of benefits. One, you increase your exposure to your listening audience. So there are those that might have the Google, might listen to their podcasts on Google. Some might listen on iTunes. Some might listen on Castbox or Spotify. And so by syndicating across those channels, you're able to expand your audience reach to those that might have an interest in listening to your podcast. And second to that is links. So you some are do follow, some are no follow, and you can simply do a control U lookup to find out whether the rel no follow tag is in there. But those links provide benefit to you, even though they are syndicated, and the content itself, the written content, is somewhat duplicated. And Google's also getting better at because they do have voice recognition technology. They do know the topics of the content that you're producing for things like podcasts and videos, and so they can better index that on the web and make sure that whatever content is being produced is actually getting indexed in a way that makes sense for folks, and that people can find the answers to their questions. They have a query, a podcast might answer that question more succinctly than a long format blog post. And if that's the case, then the question is answered, boom, they're done, and they don't need to go anywhere else. But the real importance here is to understand that once you've set up a podcast for SEO and potentially link building purposes, that syndicating that podcast across a number of different channels is extremely important and helpful for both exposure and links. And what I'm going to do is I will link to a few of those that we have both syndicated to and also submitted our feed to. They may not be syndicating each episode, but our feed is included in their website, so it's discoverable by people searching for the actual podcast itself. And so I'm going to include that in the show notes. Hopefully you find it extremely helpful. We've done a lot of digging and tried to include ourselves in things like Google, Apple, and all the podcast syndication platforms out there that help us get that expanded exposure. And it's been really helpful. Our subscriber base continues to grow, and we continue to see that uptick in traffic as a result of that, and incoming leads, which is the most important piece of all this, right? We want to make sure that we're growing our audience, but that our audience is converting, and we do have a lot of those stats. So hopefully that's helpful. I'll link to it in the show notes. Thanks again for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you and having you again on this SEO podcast.
Thank you for joining us on the SEO.co podcast. We appreciate your time. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the show, and visit SEO.co for more resources based on today's topic, as well as access to more podcast episodes to help you improve your site's long-term SEO success.